Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum for Town of Ashland 2019. My name is Judy Friedland-Levy, and thank you very much to the Candidates Forum Committee for asking me to moderate for the first half of our forum. I guess one of the reasons I was asked is that I was a school committee member for, I have to think now, 1997 to 2006. And it's just always nice to see new people stepping up with new ideas and passion for the town of Ashland to continue on with the good work that all people in town government do. Thank you to the Ashland Public Library, the Friends of the Library, We Love Ashland, WACA-TV, the Candidate Forum Committee, the candidates, and the audience tonight. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping here or ministrivia and just let you know a little bit about the format for tonight. The first session will feature the candidates for the library trustees, and because Bonnie Mitchell could not be here tonight, Carolyn Bell would read an opening and closing statement for her. And our two candidates for school committee, we have Erin Williams, who's down there. We're in alphabetical order here, and Paul Kendall, and the candidate for Board of Assessors, Chuck Lids. The two candidates there are two seats open on the Board of Health, and that is Diane Mortensen and Judy Teller, and they are unable to come. We're unable to come this evening. Just want to make sure everybody knows, all the candidates. And the second session, after we have a brief intermission and a setup, Roberta Sulman will be the moderator for, I hope I get it right, the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen. So the way the format's going to run tonight, each candidate will have an opportunity to read a 2-minute opening statement. And then we're going to open it to questions from the moderator and the public. There is a change in the format this year. Instead of just having questions from the moderator and then questions from the audience, we're going to alternate. And there'll be 3 questions from the moderator, and then we'll have 3 questions from the public. And we do have a mic over here, and we're going to ask people, if you do have any questions, to even just wait over there. We have lots of questions. The person who is asking the question, we like to get a line behind a queue there, so I will know how many questions we have to ask questions, and we can time it. The people on the committee did a wonderful job trying to figure out how much time to allot for everything, so we really do have a tight schedule tonight. So after the opening statement and the questions, each candidate will have up to 60 seconds to respond. More complex questions, you might get 90 seconds, but that would be something that I, as moderator, would say ahead of time that you'd have 90 seconds to respond. There's an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal following the completion of the responses. And again, I will ask everybody, I know that it's very important to keep your eye on Lisa, who's our timekeeper, and she will let you know as your time is running out. So I will ask you to pay attention to that so we'd have a very nice flow in the evening. As far as the audience questions, we are asking audience members tonight not to ask multiple questions. So if you're up there at the mic, just to ask one question, not a multi-part question either, because we don't have time. If you do have another question, just go to the end of the queue. And a follow-up question will be, if we have time, we might be able to have a follow-up question as long as it relates to the subject at hand. I think that's about it. I hope I've covered everything that I need to. And then we will begin, because that's what you're all here to hear about, our candidates. And I have to just say that I'm very happy to see that there are people, even if we don't have a contested race, that we're allowing candidates to just explain to the audience at home and here just what they believe and why they think they will do a wonderful job in the board that they're running for. And I think it's always important that everybody, there's that transparency so you know what this person stands for. So I am going to ask, actually, since we're sitting over here, Carolyn, Mrs. Bell, if you can read the opening statement for Bonnie Mitchell.
Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight so I can introduce myself, and thank you all for being here. My name is Bonnie Mitchell. I'm Dean of the Library at Framingham State University, and I've lived in Ashland for over 40 years, where my husband Stephen and I raised our son. I have demonstrated a commitment to Ashland both at the government level and at the grassroots level as a founding member of Arts Ashland Alliance. As a candidate for re-election for the Board of Trustees of the Ashland Public Library, I'm here to speak to my background as a lifelong learner and an academic librarian, and to my experience in providing the vision and the implementation of library access to information and a welcoming environment where all community members have an opportunity to learn and grow. My experience includes, but is not limited to, an MLS, a Master's in Library and Information Science, and a Master's in Public Administration. Graduate of Metro West Leadership Academy, almost 40 years as an academic librarian, 2 years as a dean of an academic library, and 20 years as an academic library director with direct experience in strategic planning, budgeting, managing personnel issues, overseeing renovation, grant writing, collaborating on community outreach initiatives, programming, and marketing projects. I'm familiar with the current trends and challenges facing libraries today, and committed to finding ways to address those challenges and create opportunities to enhance library services and resources. Some challenges impacting libraries are growing programs and retaining relevancy in the community, advanced technology, and adequate funding.
Thank you very much. Paul Kendall, thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Kendall. First, I'd like to thank Friends of the Ashland Public Library, We Love Ashland, and WACA-TV for tonight's event, as well as everyone involved in the organization of tonight's event. I am running for my second term on school committee. I'm the father of 2 elementary school kids, and I'm also the chair of our policy subcommittee and the chair of our current Mendez Building Committee. At that, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Chuck Lids?
Okay, I'm Chuck Lids. I live on Oregon Road. I have the title of Professor Emeritus at UMass Medical School, which means in practice that I'm retired and I didn't get anybody too mad at me while I worked there. I'm by training a social scientist, and that is actually related to what I think I can do on the assessor board. I moved to Ashland 4 years ago, so I'm a newcomer. I am constantly aware that I don't know everything about Ashland, because right now I'm on both the Trails Committee and the Sustainability Committee, and it is quite impressive how much everybody knows that I don't know about Ashland. So part of my interest in being on this is to get to know more about the town I've decided to spend the rest of my life in. When I retired, I wondered what I was going to do with myself. I had this plan that I was going to write a book, and then somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, wouldn't you join the Trails Committee?" And I thought, "Oh, I don't know, I guess so." And and then other things, and suddenly I'm involved in all sorts of things. What can I contribute? Well, I know 2 things in my professional life that I think will be helpful. One is that I have fairly decent understanding of statistics and how the numbers ought to go and I know something about decision making. Okay. And I think it's very important that we be fair, and that's what I will try to do. And I'm sorry, I went over 2 seconds.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate that. And Erin Williams?
Yep. Hi, I'm Erin Williams of 24 Pinecrest Lane. Nearly my whole life I've lived in Ashland up until I went to college at Holy Cross and then came back 2 years after I graduated. I have 2 young children in the school system, a 6-year-old kindergartner and a 10-and-a-half-year-old fourth grader. This is my second term that I'm running for. I was also appointed for a 1-year term before that, so in total I've served 4 years. This is how our family likes to volunteer. I am a self-proclaimed nerd. I love math, I love statistics, and I love taking those skills and using them in public policy and using them for improvement of a community. And so service, it just runs in our family, and this is a way that we contribute, and I'm looking forward to another term.
Thank you very much. Wow, really is wonderful to see how dedicated our citizens are and how much you have to offer. Thank you. Before I do begin with the questions, I wanted to just remind everybody that WACA-TV is live streaming this event. And in between, again, when we have our break, that everything will be, again, live. The camera will be on, the mics will be on. And then we'll have about until 7:30. That's when we'll start the second half of the evening. So, first round of questions. I think the way we'll just run it, I'm going to change the order. And they're pretty broad because they're going to be the same questions, even though you're running for different boards. So, what are the top 3 issues the board for which you're running will face over the coming year? And I'm going to start with Erin, since we started over here
Sure.
for the opening statements.
Sure. So I think anybody that's paid any attention to Jim Adams has these coffees and letters that go out to the community. He's in the direction. So the biggest thing going on right now for our schools is the Mendez building project, or the new school building project. I went to Mendez myself, and it was in tough shape when I went. And so you can imagine the kids that are going there now, how antiquated. It's just not a really functional space for conducive to learning. So Paul is on the building subcommittee and done a fantastic job with that role. So that is the biggest challenge for us, is working with the MASBO and the state and going through all the steps and trying to come up with a plan for a new school. So with that, there will be a new school. Then there will be the decisions of what happens with the existing properties we own. So I think that's another challenge for us in a community that struggles to grow and is sort of bursting at the seams, making sure how do we create that space and keep it from potentially being housing, but also make it serviceable maybe to the whole community and not just to the schools. And the third is our special ed costs. Our 15% of children cost 30% of the budget. And figuring out, Mr. Adams has done a really great job in some in-house programming that has brought children from very expensive outside schools back in. So if we can build more of those type of programs, it'll actually save the community more money.
Okay, thank you very much. Chuck?
I think the most important thing the Board of Assessors has to do is assure that things are going to be fair. I mean, that's what everybody wants out of the assessment, and I will do my damnedest to make that happen. I think there are some really interesting statistical issues, but I'm certainly not going to do that in 30 seconds. But I've spent a lot of time dealing with quantitative data and also decision-making about how you make good decisions that get you where you want to be. And I think I can make use of both of those in the job.
Okay, thank you very much. And Paul?
So some of the issues that we currently face, we will continue to face. One of the big ones is our enrollment. Our enrollment has been going up year after year. It has put strain on our capacity in our schools. So that is something that we'll continue to have to address and be creative with some of the things we do. That has impacts on things like school choice, which we have a net positive revenue for school choice. People want to come to Ashland, and even though they don't live here. But because of our enrollment, we're continually reducing the number of slots we have available. So that's a challenge both with our enrollment and capacity, but also finances. Aaron had mentioned the building project. That's certainly a large project that's going to be going on over the next several years. But in that, there's also other issues around programming. What drives the project that will be approved by the state is our educational program and what gets reimbursed. And so part of that is twofold. We'll need to determine, we have two grade configurations that we're addressing with that, but also our programming about whether we're going to have 2 or 1 programs within that school. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bonnie answered this by saying, look at the diverse makeup of our patrons, position the library in the community to offer resources that positively impact patrons. For example, college readiness, career choices, lifelong learning skills, exposure to cultural programming. Make the library a hub for all generations to gather for activities, provide materials, and meet cultural needs. Quality of life in the community, recognizing that public libraries are centers for a variety of community support services. And she notes that Ashland is making great progress in this area. She's also concerned with advanced technology, having the staff to adapt to new services to meet the needs of all community members, ensure access for all community members, and look for creative ways to address access issues. She wishes to level the playing field between haves and have-nots by providing access to new technologies, for instance, electronic access considerations, and finding ways to incorporate technology into services to engage millennials and assist others with its use, pop-up libraries. She also is concerned, as we are all, with adequate funding, actively support and provide data on successes, and advocate with the legislative team for state and local resources.
Okay, thank you. So based on the response to the top 3 issues, I would like you to address what skills, talents, and experiences that you bring that will uniquely address these issues. I'm going to start with Chuck, and then I'll have the 2 school committee members go because they're kind of connected there.
Okay. As I, of course, didn't identify 3 issues in case nobody noticed. I said that I thought the big issue is fairness, and I do think that is the issue for assessments. What I think, I swore I wasn't going to do this, but here I go anyway. You know, the regulations say you should have the actual cost of, or the sales should have the same median value as the assessments. And so that's how you say whether things are going well. If you think about it, it's possible to have a distribution of assessments that is, instead of a normal curve, is a curve like this. And that means that people at the bottom are paying more than they should be, or you could have a curve like this, and people are at the top are paying more than they should be. We need to look at this problem statistically with more sophistication than we have. I think I can help with that. And I think there's a problem. Whoops, okay, I'll stop.
Thank you very much for paying attention to the time. I appreciate that. Paul?
So on the issues, I mean, we kind of touched on, and she touched on some. I am the chair of the building committee. I think I do a decent job at understanding the regulations and different state policies that go into it. Also, there's a lot of information and a lot of details, so I think I'm pretty detail-oriented. So, and on the finances piece, you know, I think some of the detail-oriented and statistical analysis that I do is a benefit.
Okay, thank you. Erin?
So in my regular day job, I'm a finance manager for $1 billion P&L within GE. And so I've been managing money for GE for 15 years. And like I said, I'm a huge nerd. So the data analytics lends itself to cost-benefit analysis when we're going through the school building project, when we're evaluating programs for, you know, in-house versus out-of-house special education. So before I actually was in an elected position, I was using those skills, whether it was to help Mr. Herbert and then Mr. Schiavi or Mr. Adams, in looking at some of the school data. And to get really nerdy on you, there was this data manipulation tool called Tableau, and I was putting together a lot of the slides that you may have seen, whether it was pre-override or during the override, comparing us to those 4 towns that we always compare ourselves to, of Medway, Holliston, and Grafton, and, you know, 3 towns. But, you know, having those skills to be able to present data in a way that makes it digestible for somebody that's not at my level of data analytics, that's really important when we're crafting a story and trying to gain community support, whether it's the school building, what to do with the land that we potentially have left over, those sort of things.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there something to add for Bonnie?
Well, I might say, while she was on the, she is a trustee, she and her husband had 2 separate years of a program, a weekend of mystery writers came and so forth. And the other thing she's now working on is children's literature and having authors come to the library. I think that'll be really popular.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my last question before I open it up to the audience. Being a board member means being part of a team of individuals who together make stronger, more effective decisions. What experiences have you had as part of a team where success was achieved because of that teamwork? Okay. Bonnie, do you have any, Carolyn, do you have anything there? Good.
Well, I know she said here that part of her background is managing personnel issues and supervising and providing professional development opportunities for staff. If you know Bonnie, you know she's a very capable woman. She's an experienced librarian, and she's calm, and she listens more than she talks.
Okay. Paul?
Well, so it's difficult to give an individual example of it, but on teamwork, I think what's very important and something that we've done a very good job in the last several years of working on is that even though we're a 5-member committee, we're part of a team that represents the entire community. And the collaboration that we're doing right now with the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, and all the boards and committees is so incredible. It's almost unique in the Commonwealth, the collaboration we're doing right now. And so that's something we should all be proud of, that I'm proud of. And quite frankly, we wouldn't have the momentum right now we do without that collaboration and the thought that, you know, the schools can't be successful if we as a town aren't successful. And the town won't be successful if we don't have good schools. I gave an example at a function the other night that, you know, there's a downtown revitalization project, and I'm a school committee member, but I totally support that because there are times where I won't let my child go to the bagel table from Mendez because that intersection isn't a great intersection for a 10-year-old to cross on their own. But with that project and supporting projects like that, even though, you know, it doesn't have direct impacts in the schools, I think it impacts everybody positively. So,
Thank you very much. Erin?
So as far as real life examples, I played ice hockey at Holy Cross and was captain of the team. So I have real life experience of 4 years of working with 20 girls, which 20 late teen and early 20 girls can be real fun to work with. But as far as our board and teamwork, what's really nice about our board the way it is now, and how it has been, is when we go to our conference and we talk to people from other towns, we're just amazed at some of the drama and infighting and problems that these boards have. Our board works together as a team really solidly. We have 2 lawyers, 2 professional nerds, right? And we have somebody who's familiar with design and architecture. And so the skills of each of us and bringing to the table and the perspectives that we bring, and, you know, especially with having Mark on our team, to be able to be like, wait, how does that work with Mass General Law? How does that work with school committees and unions and all that stuff? So it's nice to be able to work together as a team. And I think we've partnered very well with the Board of Selectmen and with the town manager. And we have, I think, one of the most highly functioning town governments that in Metro West, at least from what I can see.
It's always nice to hear. I don't see anyone at the mic yet, so I'll give people a few moments. If you do have a question, you can open your question, even though I haven't.
Want to give me?
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for speaking up. I'm really just trying to go by the schedule.
That's fine.
Thank you, Chuck. Go ahead.
So, look, I've spent my career doing research. And, you know, there's this sort of myth that this has to do with having some brilliant mind who just, it doesn't work like that. It's always a team. You know, and I grew up in a household, to tell you the honest to God truth, where you got the floor by talking longest and loudest, okay? And I've learned over the years that if I can just listen to the people I'm working with, I get much, much better results. So I really think I've gotten around to learning how to be a team player.
Okay. You ready now? Thank you. If anyone has a question to ask, they can address it to just one person or 2 people, or anyone have a burning question yet? I see someone coming up to the mic. Thank you. You just identify yourself.
Hi, my name's Fran Blake, Gray Birch Road, Ashland. This is really for the school committee members. I heard you speaking about the special education and the percentage that it is to the budget. I understand that they're looking at revamping Chapter 70 money. Have you ever thought about talking to them about incorporating the severe Chapter 70 or special education into the general budget? That way there it's shared by the whole state rather than the communities that unfortunately get saddled with that.
So who do you want to start with?
I put it out for the 2 of you.
He just asked.
Buck up. Oh.
Okay. Paul, why don't you start?
Well, so you do highlight the challenge, and quite frankly, we're in the middle of that. I feel for the smaller communities, because you can have, for those smaller communities, a single child with severe needs can really have an impact on the local budget, and we're happen to be in the middle of that. But yeah, you're exactly right. The challenge is the way we need to absorb it locally is a challenge. Chapter 70 did this year get revamped quite a little bit to our benefit. It helped with equity across the state, so not everybody got as big a bump. They did address some of the special ed costs in there. But I think the thing we can do most, because we have great advocacy at the state level. Senate President Spilka has long been a proponent of redoing that. They need to, there's a special education circuit breaker reimbursement that they never really fully fund that they should. But the other thing that we can continue to do locally is develop our programming in-house, because some of the larger costs are when we cannot service the needs of a child and we have to outplace them. That typically costs a lot more than trying to build the programming in-house. We've actually been able to save millions of dollars a year by the programming we've already done over the last 4 or 5 years. So.
Okay. Something to add?
So I actually went into the DOE with Senator Spilka quite a few years ago, and I believe Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Herbert also went with Mr. Adams talking, because I had done some analysis on the Chapter 70 formula at that time. And it then took many years, and including a forum on Chapter 70 at the school committee conference, for it to just change this year. So do I think going back and asking them to work in special ed into it, they hadn't made a change, I believe, in 20-something years to the Chapter 70 formula. So I don't think going back to them right now is the right call. I think more that special ed needs to be federalized. That would be my goal.
I think you missed my question. They're actually trying to reformulate the formula. The more money that we got this year is to kind of make us whole from where we haven't been for the last 28 years or whatever it may be. The thing is, if you had a voice at the table to put all of special education, not just Ashland, all of special education into the general budget, so it's shared for every taxpayer in the state of Massachusetts. That's actually what my question was.
Is that clear? I mean, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the question too, Fran, but I just.
If
wanted to
they, it's my understanding that they're looking at reevaluating the program itself. If you voice to them that maybe they could pull that out of the funding that they give you and actually put it into the state funding, so it's shared by everyone in the Commonwealth for every town.
Yeah, and I think I was, maybe it was just only a brief, yes, I think that is absolutely the way to do it, is to, and whether that is directly, whether that's through a circuit breaker reimbursement, but a full reimbursement or something like that, but absolutely, the best thing to do is to say, okay, well, like I said, think of those rural districts. This past year, we had a student move in from out of state whose needs were going to cost, they cost us $300,000 a year. And it's something we need to do, we should do, but it's difficult to absorb that locally. Whereas, the larger pool should absorb that. Completely agree with you. And, we'll continue to try to make those changes. The formula did change and did help with special education costs this year, along with economically disadvantaged and some of the other, and English language learners and things like that, so.
Okay. Do you have something to add that might clarify your answer?
Just that when you talk about a student moving into your district that could cost $300,000 and that can make and break your budget for your town, that's where I believe, and a lot of parents of special needs children move specifically to help their children to get them into the best school district possible. This is where I think special ed needs to be federalized so that it doesn't matter where you live, that your child's expenses are covered.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, and
Thank
good
you
luck
very
to all
much.
of you.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Blake and I actually served on the school committee together, and along with Yolanda Greaves. So this has been a problem for a very long time.
Since 1993?
Yes, 1993. Okay, since I don't see anybody else here at this time, I'm going to go on with another 3 questions. And you can keep thinking of those questions, and if you stand there, I'll recognize you. So, topical knowledge and experience can be a big benefit when discussing, debating, and making decisions. In this changing world, how do you plan to stay aware of current happenings in the industries related to the board? Okay. You want to start?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So my morning routine starts with the first thing I do is I open the Metro West Daily News and I read it. And we're lucky that the superintendent's board and the school boards, we have certain listservs that we're on that we can always be reading sort of what are some of the issues going on. Mass Association of School Committees sends us policy updates and newsletters as to what sort of impacts us. And then we also do hear from our representatives, from Representative Lewis and Senate President Spilka, about bills that are on the Hill that might impact our schools. So being that we're sort of policy junkies, we try to keep a finger on it. And my morning starts out with reading the news and the political beat in the Metro West Daily News.
Okay. I'm just going to go down the road there. Chuck?
Okay, well, I have a lot to learn. I am aware I have a pile of documents, literally like this, that are basic training to be on the Board of Assessors. And I have gone through them, I would say, quickly, but I have a lot to learn. I have no fantasy that I don't. I think, it is essential if you're going to do this that you keep in touch with what the real estate market is like in the area, how it's different from one town to the other, because if, for example, we don't have enough of a certain type of sale to anchor our assessments to, then we have to look at other towns. So we not only need to know what the market is like in Ashland, we need to know what it's like in the surrounding towns as well. So there's a lot to learn.
Okay. Paul?
Yes, so I completely agree. Topical knowledge is important, and I think if you talk to my wife or anybody on the board, if once a topic is in front of me, I tend to go a little deep into determining the information that I need to make a decision. We have all the resources that Aaron had spoke of. I am on the chair of the policy subcommittee, so I tend to stay abreast of that as we navigate. There's certainly lots of policy and regulations surrounding particularly special education, and there's some policies that we need to update now that are quite challenging because of some of the state regulations. So I just have a tendency to really get all the information and not cursorily go over things. So I think I'll just continue to do that. So.
Okay. Something to add, Mrs. Bell?
She took good care of me. Here's her answer. Years of networking on a local and statewide level, collaborations with the Mass Library System and Mass Board of Library Commissioners. She's a member of the Ashland Cultural Council for 6 years, founding member of Arts Ashland Alliance 6 years, and a 23-year member of MCCLPHEI Incorporated, a statewide collaborative of 30 Mass public higher education institution library deans and directors, and served as president in 2012 and in 2016. She also is serving as an NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges accreditation report writer at Framingham State University on the library standard for the past 23 years. And served as a NEASC accreditation reviewer for libraries at 4 New England institutions: Plymouth State, Castleton State, Johnston State, and Rhode Island College.
Thank you
Pretty
very
good.
much. Yeah. Okay. Funding for activities is often a controversial topic, even if it's just to make copies or brochures. Do you have any suggestions on committee or board financial management? Okay. Chuck, do you want to, can you start on that one? Nope. Okay, that's no as an answer as well.
I'll go. I mean,
Go ahead.
we get our packages every week before the meeting. I choose to have mine delivered digitally. I am a big proponent of process efficiency. I have my black belt in Six Sigma, so I can't do any karate moves, but I can fix a broken process. And every September, when my kids come home from that first day of school, and I have a stack of paper this big to fill out that this town has known where I've lived for the last 7 years, and why am I filling out another form, there's greater opportunities for efficiency. And it's simple. It's cutting down on paper waste and turning these into digital processes, whether it's field trip forms and donations, those sort of things. So much of this can be done digitally, and that's something I would really like to press for in my next term.
Okay. Paul, anything to add?
There's not one thing in particular, but as Superintendent Adams would tell you, I guess my wife probably would too, that I question everything, and I think we're fortunate that we have a very fiscally conservative both town manager and superintendent, and as a school committee, we do question any and all expenditures and things like that. So I think it's just keeping that vigilance, finding ways to be more efficient and things like that. And I think we've done a fantastic job, and we can continue to work on that. We've done a lot of great things that, like tuition-free full-day kindergarten and things like that, that we've only been able to do because of our fiscal prudence over the last several years. So.
Okay. Anything to add?
Bonnie works on budgeting, she says, at Framingham State, but the big thing is we have an excellent library director, Paula Bonetti, and Paula sets the budget. She knows how much money we have, and then she decides, makes suggestions. Well, she says where it should go. Recently, we inherited or received money from someone who spent time at the library and left money for us in his will. And one of the things we decided, Paula came up with a list, we made suggestions, and decided how many and how much money we should spend for passes. So we have increased the passes at the library. But it's not really the trustee's position to budget as much as sort of support Paula in her policies and her choices.
Okay. Thank you. Just a note to the audience again, I'm going on my 6th question, so I see someone standing there, so great. I'm going to read my question, and then we'll have the audience ask some. How do you see the role of the board interacting with town staff? As you said, each board does not exist by themselves, and I think one of the successes, as Erin said, about having wonderful town government is working together. So how do you see the role of the board that you are running for interacting with the town staff? Okay. Paul?
So, town staff, I'm not sure whether that means the ones that are particularly what people would deem municipal, but I also see town staff being our administrative offices in schools and things like that. So, we don't directly interact with a lot of them. I think primarily the superintendent and town manager, and I think we're very collaborative, and I think we're very fortunate that the progress we make and the collaboration that we're able to do between like school committee and the Board of Selectmen has a lot to do with the work that's put in by the staff. And Superintendent Adams and Michael Herbert, they spend a lot of time and working. They have such a great relationship and work so hard to make sure that they're working together and that we're thinking of the whole community. So I think the best thing we can do is help support them in that, because they've been doing a fantastic job. And I think they make us look good, and it's a lot easier to be collaborative when they're laying the groundwork for us.
Okay. Erin, want to add something to that?
So the only thing I would say is it's tough sometimes also as parents, where you have to interact with your principal, who's also a town employee, and then there's sort of this invisible line where we as school committee members are not supposed to directly speak to administration other than Mr. Adams and Mr. Vieira on policy-related school committee issues. It's all supposed to sort of trickle down because they report to him. So there's not a ton of interaction, but there is, as far as one-to-one or committee to one individual, but there is a bunch of collaboration. So we do a budget seminar Saturday, where there's a Saturday in September, and we all camp out for 4 hours at the Mendez School. And a lot of times there's Board of Selectmen there, and as there was this year. And we work frequently, we get updates from them. Each school has a site council, and so we get updates there. And then also Mr. Herbert has this really wonderful relationship that Paul mentioned, and it's been very integral to, I think, the successes we've seen over the last 6 years and some of the changes with the town and the town-school relationship.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bell, do you have anything from Bonnie Mitchell?
Well, Paula's the one who interacts with the different department heads, and she's really very politic in the way she does it. And some of us maybe aren't so politic at times, but she's very good, and we support her. But there are times when the board will push her. You know, we say, for instance, we don't like the mud puddle in front of the library crossing the street. And can't you call the Board of Health some more? Or can't you call the Public Works Department? So it took us maybe about 5 years to get, they kept saying it couldn't be done. So, and we kept saying to Paula, call them. We want that puddle gone. And so she, you know, we push her a little bit where she maybe didn't want to be pushed. So she's very good interacting, and we're behind her, pushing her to, you know. For instance, one of the trustees spent a year contacting all kinds of people to get the blinking lights out in front of the library. So, you know, that wasn't something that Paula did that time, but the library board member pushed it. So it's kind of, it's an interaction between what Paula does and what the board supports her and pushes her to do sometimes.
Okay. Chuck?
Well, you know, I think the board has a relationship to the staff assessor that is very interesting. On one hand, clearly he's feeding us the large majority of the information. We're going to try to keep up with what the nature of the real estate market is and so forth. But we're getting a lot of information from him. I see the board is functioning two important ways. One is, of course, we're the appeal. When people don't like what he decides, they come to the board and say, you know, here's my case, we don't think this is right. And for that purpose, I think we have to listen to both sides of the argument and, you know, listen fairly. I think more broadly, the board is the representative of the community that oversees the staff decision-making process, and we have to keep in mind that we're doing that.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay, we do have a question from the audience. Can you just identify yourself? Thank you.
Yolanda Greaves, 127 Prospect Street. You are all individual members of a board. How do you deal with issues if you feel differently or you disagree with maybe what the board has decided or is looking to move forward with?
Okay,
And can you give an example?
okay. Paul?
Well, so I think it's very important that you have a respectful dialogue whenever there's any kind of dissension or just disagreement. And but it's also very important that even if it's on our board 4-1, and that's actually happened, where I was the one vote that was different than everybody else, and you need to say, okay, well, that's the board, and we made a decision and move forward and not hold that grudge. That just makes the next conversation that much more difficult. And so I think the example was how we were going to spend some one-time free cash allocations at the end of the year, or some kind of thing at the end of the year. I wanted to do something different that I thought, but at the end of the day, you know, we make a decision as a whole, and even if I didn't think it was the best decision, I do respect that, and quite frankly, I have faith that maybe my point of view wasn't necessarily the best if there's 4 other people that thought differently. So.
Okay. Now, Chuck, I know you're not an incumbent, but
No,
if you
I'm
can
not.
imagine that happening.
But I can tell you something about how I go about this because, and this gets into more me personally, I happen to be a Quaker, and we do everything in unity, and that means sometimes we don't make decisions for quite a while until we can get to unity. But I have learned to make decisions in that context and really it involves really listening to what that other person is saying and getting past, I've got a better idea than you do. You know, I, of course, always have the best idea, but, you know, it is It's something that I've learned over the years to listen and to understand that sometimes even that other idiot has the idea that we ought to listen to.
Okay, Erin?
I would say on our board, we're very lucky that we are all friends, and we've bonded really well over the last couple of years, and so that makes part of when you disagree, and I'm now remembering, like the fact that I sat here and Paul had to think of something, and I'm like, I can't remember anything ever being like contentious, because we just have this really nice respect for each other, and when there have been maybe differing opinions, but Paul brings a bunch of information to the table and can make his case, and it's based on fact and research. Mm-hmm. It's not about opinions. It's not about someone's personality. It's all really, at the end of the day, what happens there in that room gets forgotten, and we all still really care for each other and members of this community. So that makes it, nice. Now, when we get to have to choose what a new building looks like, I could see that getting a little bit more difficult, but I still think we'll use the precedent that we've had for the last couple of years to work from.
I know, Mrs. Bell, this is hard because I don't know if Bonnie anticipated that. If you can think of some time that she might not have.
I think what happens is that we respect the library director, and she's very good with us. She's very respectful of us. And we have had disagreements, probably about policy. And we will, and what Paula will do often is to send out a message to lots of library directors and say, what are you doing in your library and how did you handle it? And she comes back and tells us what they have reported. And then we talk about it. For instance, if she says something and I say, well, I don't see why that works. Why isn't it this way? And somebody else will add to it. And we really do discuss. I don't think we've ever gotten hot about anything. We've gotten annoyed at other people, but we've never gotten hot with each other, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we do have some more questions. Could you just identify yourself, please?
Sure. Adora Lay, AHS student, and this is for anyone to answer, but what other volunteer organizations have you been part of in Ashland?
Okay. I know some of you have mentioned some of them, but that's a great question. Thank you. Chuck?
Well, I'm on the Upper Charles Trail Committee, which has been extremely interesting. It's partly because, as I was saying before, getting to know what the town is like. Somebody says, oh, well, it's over in such and such. Oh, yeah, like, where's that? And I've gotten to be on the Sustainability Committee, which is probably what I believe in more than anything else in the entire world at this point, is that we have to do something about climate change, and I think we have to start here. I'm also on the Ashland Democratic Town Committee. I find that helpful. Yeah, okay, I have politics, that's right.
Okay. Erin?
So like I said before, before I really got into this role, it was a lot of helping the town management and the schools with data analytics and policy discussions about really related to Chapter 70 funding. But as you can imagine, being a mom with 2 young children, the volunteer hours are slim. I do volunteer with work, but what I do now in town, it had to take a little pause, but I'm a volunteer therapy dog sort of partner. And so I bring my therapy dog to the middle school and the high school. And we do Green Up Ashland Day, and there's a burgeoning movement to have a mentor network, and so I'm part of that. And then there's smaller subcommittees when you're on school committee or board of selectmen. There's smaller subcommittees that you end up on. So I'm actually on public safety, and that is one of the most important things that I feel I do, because that's a collaboration between police, fire, building admins, and town administration, making sure that our buildings and our children are safe.
Okay. Very important, that's true. Paul?
As far as formal organizations, I don't think there was a lot prior to me doing this. I was very involved in a lot of the public forums and providing input. I guess one of the primary ones, and probably unique ones, because we get this a lot from other districts being very envious, is we have a dads group that started at Warren, and now we had two, and now we've kind of merged, and we're just Ashland dads, and it's a group of dads that do everything from at the younger ages. We go in, read, we're present in the buildings because we've been through Warren. There's the principal, and then there's Manny, who's been there forever. And aside from that, there's not a lot of men in the building. And I think it's very important that they see that the dads care about education and making it a priority. So that group does a lot of great things there. We do a second grade barbecue for a send-off for the ones that are leaving there. At Mendez, we do Win It at Mendez. If you've ever seen the outtakes from that, that's an awesome event that some of the guys do. It's really amazing. They do a lot of work there. So that's an organization that I'm a part of.
I know we had a long list of things that Bonnie has been a part of. You want
Right, I
review?
think I've said it.
Yeah, I think you said it before. She's been in many, many different organizations. We have time for one more question. I see there's someone who's waiting, and then we're going to have our closing closing statements.
Okay, Toby Fink, Ashland High School student. The question is, this is for the planning board candidates, do you think Ashland needs to redevelop existing properties or develop new properties on currently existing green space?
Okay. Now, that's a great question for the planning board, but the candidates aren't up here until the next session.
Great.
Hold on to it, and please come back then. Okay. So I'm going to have you just about time to have our break. So I'm going to ask you to make your closing statements, and I think we have 60 seconds, but since I'm foregoing one more question, if you go over a little bit, that's okay, to 90 seconds. Okay? Can we start over here?
Bonnie writes, I have the credentials, background, and long-term experience in librarianship and management. I have built a local and statewide network of colleagues to tap into for collaboration and assistance with advocacy. I bring the town-gown connection from Framingham State University that opens up possibilities as a resource for future collaborations and other opportunities. I am familiar, she writes, with the commitment of serving on town committee, passionate about libraries, arts and culture, lifelong learning, and access of information for all. Will advocate for support and assist with marketing the library as a hub of the community for all Ashland citizens. Please consider me when you vote on May 21st.
Thank you very much. Paul?
Well, so I'd rather take the time to make sure everyone knows that Wednesday is town meeting. I know there's no huge debt exclusion votes or anything like that, but there's still a tremendous opportunity for us to, A, continue the momentum, but there's significant things that are still on there, including the revitalization of downtown and the 126 corridor. There's just so many things, and over the last couple of years, we've had a tremendous improvement in the number of participants in town meeting. We need to keep that going. So please show up. It's tremendously important. It's worth your time. And then please also come out on the 21st and vote. So, and thank you again to everyone responsible for hosting the event tonight.
Thank you. Chuck?
Well, I'd like to add my thanks to everybody for listening to this. It's a very controversial thing, you know. I mean, I have so much competition. But I do want to say that one of the things I'm really looking forward to is learning from my fellow committee members and from the staff person. They are all three impressive people, and I'm hoping I'll gain their wisdom.
Aaron?
Thank you again for hosting this evening, and while I look out into the audience, there's a lot of familiar faces who are, heavily invested in town politics. There's actually a lot of faces I'm seeing that are new, which is great, and to Paul's point, for town meeting and for the election to show up. And I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is a real sea change in our town, especially from when I grew up here. It just has this new look and feel and a sense of purpose and direction that's really positive. And to be a part of that going forward is really important. So appreciate your vote, and thank you for coming out.
Okay, thank you. Just to remind everybody that Paul Kendall and Aaron Williams are running for spots. There are 2 spots on school committee. Chuck Lids is running for a spot, and he's running uncontested for the Board of Assessors, and Carolyn Bell, so nicely represented Bonnie Mitchell, whose name will be on the ballot for library trustee. Again, these are uncontested races, but you can see that we have people here who are very committed to making and continuing to have Ashland be a wonderful place to live. I did want to just, again, say one of the things on my list that I was given by the very hardworking Candidate Forum Committee was about maintaining civil discourse. And I think, again, we did that. I think it's one of the most important things we can model for young and old alike. And one thing I can see is just how well all boards seem to be working together, and just hearing the collaboration that you all said, I think that says a lot for our town, and that we have a wonderful future.